Hello everyone, welcome back to Just My Stupid Opinion. I'm Adrian Lloyd, and today is the 21st of February 2019. So, we're going to be focusing this time about more to do with the investigations that are going on by the Ethics Commissioner and the Justice Committee, which have been launched into the SNC Lavalin case. Now, from our last time we spoke, we found out that Gerald Butts had resigned from the Prime Minister's office, and people were questioning why this is, because he's saying that he had nothing to do with the scandals and the allegations that have been put out against him, that he was the one that ended up speaking to Jody Wilson-Raybould and to try and get her to persuade to have this remedial agreement deal put in for the SNC Lavalin case. And many people are wondering, why did he step down if he had nothing to do with it? I don't know for this for a fact. I would have to look more into it, but I'm speculating that by him resigning from the Prime Minister's office, I think he would then have a similar defense as to what Jody Wilson-Raybould has right now. Jody Wilson-Raybould can't speak about what went on during her time as Attorney General because she has the solicitor-client privilege. I think that by Gerald Butts resigning, he would have a similar defense, that he can't speak on certain things that took place in the Prime Minister's office simply because he has now resigned from that position. That's just a speculation. I don't know that for a fact, but if he really had nothing to do with this, if the allegation are false, why resign? He wasn't forced out, it seems. Right now, it seems he did it of his own free will. This wasn't sort of like a Patrick Brown situation where he's more or less forced out by his party. So we'll end up seeing what's going on with that. But from what I've been looking into when it comes to the Justice Committee, I have serious doubts that this is going to be done in an ethical way. Because, we do have right now MPs that are breaking ranks from the Trudeau government and are starting to say that we need to hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould, we need an investigation into this, and that's good to see. Even some people are speaking out against... even some are speaking out saying that we need an official investigation into it, and that's really good to see. But the Justice Committee is Liberal-dominated, so, I'm not expecting them to conduct themselves in a great way. But more than that, it has to do with what the chair of the Justice Committee ended up saying recently. This ended up coming out on February 14th, I believe. Yeah, this was an article that was put out by the Globe and Mail, and it says here that Liberal MP says Wilson-Raybould might have lost justice post because she doesn't speak French. Now, this goes on with some of the other hit pieces that we've already seen against Jody Wilson-Raybould, in which they were talking about how, she was very self-centered, she showed up for meetings when she wanted, it was very Jody-centric, these sort of things. She was a thorn in the Liberals' side. So they've gone to every length to explain why she got moved from her position after almost 3.5 years. But now they're trying to say that, it's because she doesn't speak French. If this was an issue, it would have come up months ago, years ago even. I mean, maybe I don't know for a fact if she doesn't speak French. I'm guessing that she doesn't. But if this was really an issue, then she would have been moved from that position a long time ago, because by now there would certainly be a time when a French case came across her desk and she would have to translate it. And she clearly didn't have a problem up till now. So the point that this is the reason she got moved out doesn't really work. But as it says here, it says, Anthony Housefather, the chair of the House of the Commons Justice Committee, was speaking to a Montreal radio station trying to address allegation that Ms. Wilson-Raybould was moved out of the justice portfolio over her refusal to ask prosecutors to shelve a prosecution against Montreal engineering construction giant SNC Lavalin Group, Inc. Now, if we go over here just to Anthony Housefather's Twitter account, we can see just down here on the bio, it says right here, he's a member of Parliament for Mount Royal, attorney and swimmer, and then it says Chair Standing Committee of Justice and Human Rights, the exact committee that's launching the investigation into this. So can we expect that he's going to conduct this in an ethical way, in a non-biased way, when he's making excuses as to why Jody Wilson-Raybould was forced out of office? Now, he didn't stand by these claims. I think I have them, but We'll get into that just in a second. It says the prime minister has the undisputed right to choose who is in the cabinet position, he told radio station CJAD Thursday. And there are millions of reasons why people can be shuffled from one position to another. He's not wrong on that. But he goes on. He said the federal Justice Department will be required to address numerous matters in Quebec in the months ahead, and suggested that this might be a motivation for the shuffle, that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau needed a fluent French speaker. Later Thursday afternoon on Twitter, however, Mr. Housefather said that he erred by making the comments and that he has no specific knowledge of the reason behind Ms. Wilson-Raybould's removal from the Justice portfolio. In a follow-up tweet 36 minutes later, he apologized to Ms. Wilson-Raybould, quote, "I never should have tried to speculate about something like that," end quote. When I hear that, it sounds like this guy, Anthony Housefather, is just making excuses for it. And once again, if I'm expecting him to conduct the investigation ethically, making excuses as to why, without any prior knowledge as to the real reason, doesn't bode well for me. It doesn't sit well that this is going to go over. And I'm curious as to what would happen if it turns out that the Justice Committee cleared Justin Trudeau of any wrongdoing, but then the Ethics Commissioner found out that he did do something wrong. How would that sit with the Canadian public? This is why people want a RCMP investigation. It's because we don't trust the government institutions to do it. Anyway, as we move on, it says here, a motion has been put forward to invite Jody Wilson-Raybould to appear before the Justice Committee. It says, and apparently this was put forward by Ikra Khalid, of all people. And she's not the only one. We're going to see in just a minute that also the opposition set forth by the NDP, I believe it was, and backed up by the Tories, they also put a motion in to have her speak towards the Justice Committee. I also believe it was to waive her attorney-client privileges. Anyway, it says, last week, the Liberal Majority Justice Committee shuffled through a motion to have several witnesses appear for questioning on allegations of political interference in the SNC Lavalin affair behind closed doors. It says here, though, excluded from that list were key members of the Prime Minister's office like Gerald Butts and former Justice Minister herself, Jody Wilson-Raybould. So these were supposed to be two of the key players. There are more, definitely, but these are two key players in this whole affair, but they were apparently not put forward by this motion by Ikra Khalid. I'm glad to see at least a Liberal put a motion forward for this, but it seems that it wouldn't have really mattered, considering how the main woman behind this doesn't even get a say in it. But we move on. Wilson-Raybould to testify at Justice Committee, but Liberals block move for PMO staff to appear. Remember, Justin Trudeau is saying that, he welcomes an investigation. We saw that in, I believe it was episode 91 when we were looking into, the first time that I was looking into this whole situation with SNC Lavalin, is that he was saying that he didn't want investigation. And when then finally the Ethics Commissioner was saying he's going to launch an investigation, it said, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau comes and says, I welcome an investigation so we can clear the air. But now they're doing everything they can to block key members from doing this. We're already seeing it. It's just absolutely ridiculous. This was the Prime Minister, the government that promised the most transparent government in Canadian history, yet he has proven himself to be the complete opposite. He also was back in about 2015 or so, he was talking about situations that were going on in Harper's Prime Minister's office, and he was talking about how the idea that the Prime Minister would block anybody from being able to speak to committees or being investigated is just... he didn't use the word tyranny, but he was borderline on using it, and now he's doing the exact same thing. Trudeau is the biggest hypocrite that we have ever seen as Prime Minister. Anyway, it says here, Liberal MPs on the Commons Justice Committee have blocked an effort to have Prime Minister's office staff testify on the scandal surrounding former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould. The committee will hear from Wilson-Raybould herself, but also voted down a motion to call on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to waive solicitor-client privileges. That means Wilson-Raybould may decline to answer most questions. If he also really cared about clearing the air, then waive the solicitor-client privilege. This is the exact thing that would clear the air if you allow Jody Wilson-Raybould to speak. In fact, if you do so, and she's lying, then you can refute those lies. But it seems clear to me that this is why the Prime Minister doesn't want her coming forward, and why he won't waive the privileges. Because if she does speak, it's going to be damaging to him, and we're going into an election cycle, which is the big reason why he doesn't want to. The big reason why he doesn't want her to speak. Because if she comes out and tells the truth, and she ends up saying what we're all thinking happened, then this is exactly, as we saw in the episode 91, this is the thing that brings down governments. Trudeau, the 2019 year is important for all parties to keep as much of a squeaky clean image, because you're going into the election cycle, and Trudeau is running for re-election. Anyway, it says here, the decision was made during an in-camera meeting on Tuesday afternoon, meaning it was closed to the public, and details about the deliberation were secret. I don't even know what to say about this. I feel like I'm just going to end up repeating myself if I talk too much about it. Just that it's about transparency. If they really cared, then they would invite the public in, they would invite the news in, they would invite others in to show that they have nothing to hide. I mean, if you think about how it works with a criminal investigation, if you have somebody who's refusing to tell the police what ended up happening, refusing to be honest, and is keeping secrets, then you don't trust them that they actually didn't do the crime. The more honest you are with the police, then the more willing they are to see that maybe you didn't have a hand in this. Maybe you are just being brought in and you're just a suspect, but you had nothing to do with it. But this is not the way it's appearing. And when it comes to the government, the entire nation is your jury. So when we look at this, and we see that you are holding secret meetings, when we see that you're not allowing the person who's making these accusations to speak, then none of us are going to trust you that you're telling the truth. Despite that, we still have people that are believing that Trudeau is the greatest prime minister in the world, in Canadian history. I mean, even recently I've seen some retarded woman on Twitter say this. It was literally as the SNC scandal was going on. She says, just keep being the best prime minister that Canada's ever seen. I don't know how people become this delusional. But we move on. Liberals defeat opposition call for public inquiry in SNC Lavalin as Wilson-Raybould abstains. And the reason she abstains is because, I'll let her speak for herself, but just a summary is because she believed that because it involved her, she shouldn't have a vote in the say, and that she should let the Parliament do it. You can believe whether that's a good idea, take it for your own opinion if you think that's a good idea, or whether that's a bad idea, whether that's honorable or not, but we're going to listen to what she has to say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask that the record show that I abstain from voting on that matter. The reason for my abstention is that the matter in part has to do with me personally, and I do not think that it is appropriate for me to vote on a matter that has to do with me personally. I have said that I am seeking counsel on this matter of what I can and cannot say. I understand fully that Canadians want to know the truth and want transparency. Privilege and confidentiality are not mine to waive, and I hope that I have the opportunity to speak my truth.
So two things there I just want to point out. First of all, just this at the end that we're seeing, I noticed that of the people who are clapping for her, it was all the opposition. These are the Tories and the NDP here that are clapping for what she said. None of the Liberals are happy with what she ended up saying. Nobody was supporting her. Which again looks suspicious in my eyes, that they're hiding something. And the other thing I wanted to bring up is just something she did say. She says she's looking forward to speaking her truth. I never like this idea, this saying that I'm going to speak my truth, because the truth is the truth. And this is sort of a sleight of hand I find a lot of liberals do, is that it's not the truth, it's an individual truth. It's, oh, this person has a truth and that person has a truth. There's only one truth. It's not like, it's this idea that facts aren't facts, and it kind of reminds me a lot of the sleight of hand that Jordan Peterson played when he was having his debate with Sam Harris, for those who saw, where he was talking about how when they were debating the idea of God, he was like, well, you pretty much saying that maybe my version of truth is different from your version of truth. There is only the truth. To me, that is a universal standard. What is true, what is not true. And you can't go saying that I have a truth and you have a truth. So I didn't like this part of what she ends up saying. I kind of understand her positioning, though, when she talks about wanting to abstain from the vote because it concerns her. I do think, though, that if she did put a vote forward, that she would vote in order to speak. She would vote in favor of the opposition than her current government. But going back to this article, it says here, the Liberals have defeated a motion calling for a public inquiry into allegations that the Prime Minister's office pressured former attorney Jody Wilson-Raybould to help SNC Lavalin avoid criminal prosecution. Wilson-Raybould herself abstained, telling the House she didn't think it was appropriate to vote on the matter she was personally involved in. But two Liberals, Toronto MP Nathaniel Erskine-Smith and New Brunswick MP Wayne Long, joined all the opposition parties in supporting the motion. So I'm glad to see that these two MPs have some a principled stance that allows them to vote when they think that corruption has been done in their government. They're saying, we need to have a public inquiry in this, a public investigation, which is what people want to see. When it goes on, when talking about the Prime Minister, he says the allegations need to be fully aired, but he argues that inquiries by the Federal Ethics Commissioner and House of Commons Justice Committee are sufficient to get to the bottom of them. Again, if he wanted to be completely transparent, he would allow these public inquiries, because not a lot of people have faith in these government institutions. We already talked about how the Justice Committee is a liberal-dominated committee, which means that I feel they're not going to conduct themselves in an ethical or non-biased way. Excuse me, dog. Sorry about that. But then on top of that, many people have questions about the current ethics commissioner, and I brought up before about how many people believe that he is another liberal puppet, because this is not the same ethics commissioner who launched the investigation into Trudeau a couple years ago when he took the money and he took the vacation to the Agacon Island, and he was found guilty of 4 ethics violations. And just a quick correction, I realized the last time I mixed up my dates. I said it was in December of 2018. It was December 2017 when he ended up getting convicted of that. I think that was in episode 91. So as we see here, this is just talking again about them voting down the... Oh, there you go. Now you can see. This is from Spencer Fernando. Trudeau Liberals vote against allowing Jody Wilson-Raybould to speak freely. And he just goes to touch on a little more. He says, the Liberals just voted against waiving solicitor-client privilege and allowing Jody Wilson-Raybould to speak freely. It failed by 160 to 133 margin. The motion was brought forth by the NDP and was supported by the Conservatives. And again, this is where I talk about the Prime Minister running the government with an iron fist. I have no doubt that these MPs, the one from Toronto, I think it was, in New Brunswick, I have no doubt that they're going to face lashback because they end up voting in support of the opposition, in support of the Tories and the NDPs for this public inquiry. Now, what was interesting is that Jody Wilson-Raybould went to go actually meet in a cabinet meeting that took place recently. I think this was on Monday, actually. Jody Wilson-Raybould met with the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's federal cabinet on Parliament Hill Tuesday and confirmed she remains a member of the Liberal caucus as questions continue to swirl around the SNC Lavalin affair and Gerald Butt's resignation. Wilson-Raybould's meeting comes exactly a week after she resigned as Veteran Affairs Minister amid allegations that when she was Attorney General, the PMO pressured her to abandon the prosecution of a fraud and corruption case against the Quebec-based engineering and construction giant. I really don't know why Jody Wilson-Raybould is staying in the Liberal government, is staying part as a Liberal MP instead of either crossing the floor or sitting as an independent. If they've really encouraged her to do this, to do what she is claiming that they have, or what the allegations, I should say, in the Globe and Mail story are claiming, then this shows a lot of corruption and unethical practices, and I don't know why she would stick with a government that does this. I will admit, it does make me just a tad suspicious of of Jody Wilson-Raybould herself. But again, time will tell, and hopefully we will see a wavering of the solicitor-client privileges. But the thing is that this was a very contentious issue to have her speak in front of the committee, because she ended up having to wait more than 2 hours for permission to attend the cabinet meeting. Jody Wilson-Raybould spent more than 2 hours waiting outside of the cabinet room on Tuesday after her former colleagues hotly debated her request to address them about the SNC Lavalin affair. Multiple sources tell CBC News that some cabinet ministers were concerned about the optics of her unprecedented request to attend a measure in the meeting in the inner circle just a week after she quit the cabinet. The sources tell CBC that Wilson-Raybould contacted the Prime Minister the next morning just before the cabinet meeting asking to attend. The Prime Minister took her request to cabinet, sparking a vigorous debate. And the debate went both ways. Apparently there were some who wanted her to come in and speak, and others didn't want her to speak. I do think they were debating the optics on this, but it had more to do with the fact that they were concerned that they were debating the optics, but I think it was because they have more to hide, and they figured that having her speak, if any of that ended up leaking, then that would just look bad on the government. But it goes on. Trudeau's answers so far have done nothing to quell the controversy. He first declared the allegation was false, but conceded a day later that there had been discussion in the fall with Wilson-Raybould about SNC Lavalin affairs to obtain a deferred prosecution agreement, which would allow the Montreal firm to pay a fine and avoid criminal trial. A week into the affair, the Prime Minister revealed that he had met with Wilson-Raybould on September 17th, almost 2 weeks after federal prosecutors told SNC Lavalin it would not be invited to negotiate a DPA, and that she asked him if he is going to direct her to make a specific decision on the case. Now, some people are trying to act as if this excuses the Prime Minister from all things, says, well, he met with her a couple weeks after that the decision was made, but not necessarily. Because if we are to take the allegations of Gerald Butts seriously, that he was the one that tried to pressure Jody Wilson-Raybould to do this, then don't forget that Trudeau was the one who said that anything that comes from either Katie Telford or from Gerald Butts, it might as well be as if he is saying them. And Gerald Butts is a good friend of Justin Trudeau for a long, long time, ever since college, I believe, so a good 20 years or so or more. So if he was to come up with this, then it's just as if the Prime Minister himself was to say this. So it doesn't excuse him, and that doesn't mean that he did not direct somebody in the PMO to go and tell her to do this. Granted, it was not, we can now know that perhaps it was not him himself who ended up doing it, but it does in no way excuses Justin Trudeau from what ended up happening. And I have no doubt that he would have instructed someone like Gerald Butts to confront her to do something like this. Pretty much we found this out about court documents. That's one of the last things we're going to be touching on before signing off. Is that this idea that it was he spoke to her after the denial of the remedial agreement. Says that the court documents show that Director of Public Prosecution told the engineering construction giant last September 4th that the decision not to proceed with negotiations toward a remedial agreement to help SNC Lavalin avoid bribery charges, and it was 13 days later, on September 17th, that Trudeau ended up doing this. So the last thing we're going to see here is Justin Trudeau speaking to the media about what's going on, about these inquiries that are going on.
let Mr. Wilson-Raybould speak to Cabinet yesterday. There are suggestions it's the markings of a cover-up.
Oh, I think it's extremely important that everyone have an opportunity to hear the different perspectives in this situation. That's why we welcome her going forward to the Parliamentary Committee, and that's why, quite frankly, both we are getting advice from the current Attorney General, and she's getting advice from her counsel on what can be talked about that's not covered by privilege. At the same time, obviously, it was she had asked to speak to her former cabinet members, colleagues, and that's exactly what she did.
Why did she for a public inquiry then?
I think we have a number of things going on. There's the Ethics Commissioner who is doing an investigation into this issue. The Parliamentary Committee is seized with it. We'll be hearing from her. We'll be hearing from experts. We'll be hearing from a range of people. It'll make the determination as to who it needs to hear from. But I think it is important that there be an airing on this situation at the same time as we continue to work on a broad range of big issues that matter.
So there he is, once again dodging the questions, and this is why you can't trust a thing that comes out of Justin Trudeau's mouth. Because he's talking to there needs to be an airing, but he's blocking her from speaking. They're blocking some of the members of the PMO staff from speaking, including Gerald Butts. Whether that's still the case because of his resignation, I'm not sure, but I think that they probably are still trying to block him from speaking. He's trying to avoid a public inquiry into this, and then he's also saying that we need to clear the air on the whole situation. Nothing that comes out of the Prime Minister or this government looks good in this situation. This is why we need a public inquiry and why I believe there should be a criminal investigation into it, because of this being corruption at the highest levels. But we'll end up seeing more as time goes on, because as much as it sucks, this is all we can do. All we can do is wait and see what ends up happening. The suspense is killing me, but even by now, I have no doubt that this sort of corruption took place in the Prime Minister's office, because if they didn't take place, they'd be doing absolutely everything to clear their name and let everyone speak to show that Jody Wilson-Raybould is lying about the situation, or that the allegations in the Globe and Mail story a few weeks back are absolutely false. But they're not doing this. They're trying to block any sort of investigation at every single step. This was also the guy who tried to block the Ethics Commissioner investigation into this whole situation. My guess is another guilty verdict by the Ethics Commissioner would be the nail in the coffin for him. That would be at least 5 accusations of unethical practice by the Prime Minister's office while he was in the 3.5 years or so that he has been in charge of this country. So as always, keep your eyes open. Pay close attention to this scandal because it's going to be big. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is just my stupid opinion.